The phone felt familiar in my hand, a conduit for a mother's everyday love and concern. I was simply going to ask my son Max for a date, the day I would watch him pledge his forever. But the moment the video call connected, the air in my own living room turned to ice. My daughter-in-law, Lena, didn't let him speak. Her eyes, sharp and glinting, locked directly onto mine. A smile, cold and utterly chilling, graced her lips. "Oh, we already got married yesterday," she said, her voice dripping with a casual cruelty. "We only invited special people, special people." The words slammed into me, a sucker punch to the soul. They echoed in the silence of my mind, each syllable a shard of glass. Special people, and I? For 3 long years I had been their silent guardian. I was the steady hand that paid their $500 monthly rent, the benefactor who furnished their entire house from sofa to spoons, the savior who filled their barren refrigerator when their ambitions outstripped their means. Was not a special person. The world narrowed to the weight of the phone in my hand, 1,000 pounds of shattered dreams. My vision tunneled, catching my son, my Max, deliberately avoiding my gaze, while Lena settled back, smug and triumphant, on the very sofa my generosity had provided. A hollow ache bloomed in my chest. Hanging uselessly in my closet was the pale blush-pink dress I had so carefully chosen for her wedding. I had spent $200 imagining the soft fabric catching the light in 100 wedding photos. Photos I would now forever be absent from. The new shoes sat beside it, a monument to my foolishness. For weeks I had built a castle of dreams in my heart. I had scrimped and saved the secret $1,000 to bless their new beginning. I had called my sister Diana in Chicago, my voice bubbling with the happy news. I had scrubbed my house from top to bottom, polishing every surface, dreaming of a small celebration here after the ceremony. My home filled with their laughter, all of it, every hope, every plan, every saved dollar, evaporated into dust with her 4 poisoned words. Only special people. Max finally found his voice, a rehearsed, hollow sound that didn't belong to the boy I raised. "Mom, it was an intimate thing, very small. Just the 2 of us and the witnesses." But the lie was as flimsy as tissue paper. I had already seen the truth, a digital spectacle of my own exclusion. Scrolling through social media, my heart fractured anew with every image. There were Lena's parents, beaming with pride, flanking the happy couple. There were her siblings raising flutes of bubbling champagne in a toast. And there was Lena, in a beautiful white gown, a gown I now realized was financed by the $800 I had given her last month for personal expenses. I had, quite literally, helped pay for my own humiliation. A week later, 7 days of nursing a quiet, searing hurt. Then the phone rang again. It was Lena, but her voice was a completely different instrument. Gone was the confident queen who had exiled me. In its place was a desperate, pleading tremor. "Renate," she began, her words tumbling out in a panicked rush. "The rent is overdue. The landlord is threatening us. He says if we don't pay this week, he'll evict us. You forgot to make the transfer." Her voice shook, a performance of a world ending that I had single-handedly postponed time and again. I let the silence stretch, a vast, quiet ocean of all my sacrifices. I saw the mental images of all my rushed trips to the bank, the plans I had cancelled, the countless nights my own dinner had been a simple bowl of beans and rice so that they could feast on their desires. And now, after so deliberately carving me out of their lives, they had the breathtaking audacity to call as if nothing had happened, as if my heart weren't still bleeding from their betrayal. "Lena," I said, my voice a calm, steady glacier that surprised even me. The storm of pain had crystallized into something unyielding. "Didn't I warn you? I only help special people." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. A void so deep and profound I could hear the fierce, triumphant beat of my own heart. For the first time in years the roles had reversed. It was not I who was trembling, but her. "Renate, I don't understand," Lena stammered, her voice a fragile, breaking thing. "We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me. Lies. Each word was a carefully crafted lie, swaddled in that saccharine tone she reserved exclusively for when her hands were outstretched. It was the same voice that had coaxed money from me for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the rings, all of which I had helped finance, blind to the cruel truth that I would be barred from the very ceremony where they would be exchanged. For years, I had lived with a constant, gnawing anxiety. Walking on a field of eggshells, I measured every word, calculated every gesture, and meticulously wrapped every gift, all in the desperate hope of earning a mere crumb of affection from my own son. I had perfected the role of the obliging mother-in-law, the silent provider who never protested when they treated me as if I were invisible. But that phrase, "only special people," had ignited a dormant fire within me. It was a wildfire of clarity. In the quiet aftermath of our call, I had tallied the cost of my own folly. The numbers, once abstract, now stared back at me with brutal honesty. Over 3 years, between rent, groceries, gifts, emergencies, and simple whims, I had poured over $20,000 into their lives. $20,000 I had clawed from my retirement, from the savings my late husband had left to ensure my peace. And for what? To be branded a stranger on my own son's wedding day. That night, after I hung up, I sat on my bed and cried. But these were not the soft, sorrowful tears of a victim. They were scalding tears of rage, a torrent of accumulated frustration, and silently endured humiliation. I wept for all the times they made me feel my love was a burden, my presence a nuisance, and my money my only worth. I mourned the foolish mother I had been, the woman who had lost herself completely in a futile quest to become indispensable to those who considered her utterly dispensable. When dawn broke, something fundamental had shifted inside me. It was more than the sting of betrayal. It was a glacial, unyielding resolve. I rose and faced my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes, the same wrinkles that mapped a lifetime of giving love without receiving it in return. But now, my gaze held a new, flinty hardness, a diamond-core determination that had been forged in the fires of my heartbreak. I went to the kitchen and made my coffee, a ritual 4 decades strong. But this morning, I did not ache to call Max and ask how he had slept. I did not clutch my phone, yearning for an apologetic message. For the first time in a long, long time, I was my own first priority. I sat at the table where I had so often planned surprises for them, counted out bills for their expenses, and wept silent tears at their indifference. Now, this table would bear witness to my rebirth. I laid out my checkbook and bank statements, and I began the final, sobering accounting. I needed to see the full, breathtaking scope of my own blindness. Monthly rent, $500 36 months, $18,000 food and supplies. $200 36 months, beha $7,200 birthday, Christmas, and anniversary gifts. At least $3,000 Lena's medical emergencies. $800 the car loan they never repaid. $2,500 the air conditioner repair. $600 the living room furniture. $200 $33,400. That was the precise price tag of my generosity. $33,400. A fortune I had ripped from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from the savings I had built penny by penny through decades of honest work. All of it flung into the abyss to sustain 2 adults who could not even muster the decency to feign respect. The phone rang, and Max's name flashed on the screen. In the past, my heart would have leapt, and I would have scrambled to answer, praying for an apology, for an explanation that would mend the fracture in my world. This time, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. The silence that followed was not empty. It was powerful. 10 minutes later, Lena's name appeared. I let her call too fade into voicelessness. Then a text buzzed through from Max. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." My finger hovered for only a second before I deleted the message, a simple tap that felt like severing a chain. At 2 o'clock, I decided to go for a walk. Not for them, not for a bank transfer, a grocery run for their needs, or a trip to the pharmacy for Lena's prescriptions. Today I walked for the sheer, unadulterated pleasure of it. I strolled past the park where I had once pushed a little boy on a swing. I could almost hear the ghost of his laughter, feel the memory of his small arms wrapped around my neck, whispering I was the best mom in the world. When had that sweet boy become this man, who saw me as an ATM with a heart to be broken? When did I start confusing love with currency? When did I begin to believe I had to purchase my own son's affection? The question hung in the air, but for the first time, it didn't cripple me with grief. It fueled my resolve. The reckoning was not over. It had only just begun. My next stop was the bank, a place that for 3 years had been the temple of my self-inflicted financial martyrdom. I stood before its gleaming glass doors, my heart not pounding with anxiety, but beating a steady, determined rhythm. Through the glass, the branch manager, Mr. Cleaner, caught my eye and offered a warm wave. This man had been a silent witness to my decline, processing every automatic transfer that bled my accounts dry to feed Max and Lena's comfort. I didn't hesitate. I walked directly into his office. "Mr. Cleaner," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, "I need to cancel every automatic transfer I have programmed." He looked up, genuine surprise etching his features. For 36 months, these transactions had been as predictable as the tides. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter?" he asked, his brow furrowed with a concern I found startling. It was more consideration than my own son had shown me in years. "Did something happen?" "What happened," I replied, holding his gaze, "is that I have finally decided to see the world as it is, not as I wished it to be. I want to cancel everything, and I need to know how to fortify my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money." As Mr. Cleaney began processing the cancellations, my phone erupted in a frantic symphony of rings and buzzes. Max, Lena, Max again. It was as if they had a sixth sense, a parasitic radar that detected the moment their life support was being severed. With a profound sense of finality, I pressed the power button and watched the screen go black. The silence was liberation. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Clean said gently, handing me the confirmation papers. "I apologize for overstepping, but in all these years, I have seen you be exceptionally generous. I only hope you are not being pressured into this." His kindness was a balm in a tragedy. This virtual stranger saw my worth when my own flesh and blood saw only my wallet. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Clean," I assured him. "On the contrary, I have finally stopped pressuring myself." Leaving the bank, I felt a weightlessness I hadn't known in years. The shackles of obligation had been lifted. My money was mine. My life was mine. But the universe, it seemed, was eager to test my newfound resolve. When I arrived home, my blood ran cold. 3 cars were parked haphazardly in front of my house, Max's, Lena's, and one I didn't recognize. Through my own living room window, I could see shadows moving. They had keys. The bitter irony struck me. I had given them the keys to my home and my heart, trusting they would one day care for me as I had for them. I took a deep, steadying breath, my hand curling around the new, solitary key in my pocket. It was time for the first real battle of my new life. I pushed the door open to a scene that would be seared into my memory. Max was slumped on my sofa, his head in his hands. Lena was pacing like a caged tiger, her movements sharp with panic, and a stranger, a man in a cheap gray suit, was rifling through a stack of papers on my dining table, my private documents. "What is the meaning of this?" My voice cut through the tension, sharper and louder than I had intended. All 3 heads snapped toward me as if I were the intruder. Lena was the first to break the silence, her voice a familiar theatrical blend of desperation and false concern. "Renate, thank God. We've been so worried. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher. He's a lawyer we consulted about your situation." "My situation?" The words were ice. I was not aware I was in one. "I am, in fact, perfectly fine." Max lifted his head, and I saw it. Not remorse, but pure, unadulterated financial panic in the eyes of my little boy. "Mom, we went to the bank. Mr. Clean said you canceled everything. that you blocked our access. We don't understand why you're doing this." Mr. Fisher approached me, offering a hand and a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Mrs. Richter, I am Dr. Fisher, specializing in family law. Your children are deeply concerned about your mental well-being and have asked me to assess your capacity." I ignored his outstretched hand. Instead, I strode to the table and began gathering my papers, my movements deliberate and firm. "These are my private documents. You are trespassing and violating my privacy. You have no right." "Mom, please," Max interjected, using that condescending tone he'd mastered. "We're worried about you. This behavior, cutting us off, ignoring us, it's not normal. We think you might need help." Then Lena moved in, her voice dripping with a syrupy, false tenderness as she reached for my hand. "Renate, sweetheart, we know you've been under so much stress lately." I snatched my hand away before she could touch me. The room fell into a stunned silence. I looked at each of them, the lawyer, the scheming daughter-in-law, the son who had sold his soul, and I finally drew the line in the sand. "This is not stress," I said, my voice low and deadly calm. "This is clarity. You declared me not special enough for your wedding. Now you find me not stable enough to control my own life. The performance is over. Get out of my house." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the deafening sound of my own heart, no longer breaking but standing its ground, strong and unyielding at last. "Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you think," Lena said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "At your age, episodes of confusion are perfectly normal." The word confusion detonated in the space between us, its meaning suddenly, terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was an ambush. The lawyer, the invasion of my home, the feigned concern. It was all a calculated move to have me declared mentally incompetent. The same woman who had coldly exiled me from my son's wedding was now trying to lock me away in a legal prison, all to get her hands on what remained of my money. A cold, steel-like calm settled over me. "I am not confused," I stated, my voice cutting through the tension with the sharpness of a blade. "I am clearer than I have been in years, and you are all going to leave my house. Now." Mr. Fisher stepped forward, deploying that smarmy, condescending tone lawyers use to patronize their targets. "Mrs. Richter, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have a right to intervene if they believe your capacity for sound financial judgment is impaired. They have documented several concerning behaviors." "Concerning behaviors?" The laugh that escaped me was harsh, stripped of all warmth. "Like what?" "Daring to believe that my money belongs to me. Choosing to stop financing the lives of two able-bodied adults who treat me with utter contempt." Lena flinched as if struck. "We have never treated you badly. You are family. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway," she shrieked, her mask of concern shattering into 1,000 pieces. "We are just—" Speeding up the process, there it was. The naked, ugly truth laid bare. In their eyes, I was already in my grave. My life was merely an inconvenient delay before they could claim their prize. "Out!" The single word was a command, not a request. I pointed to the door, my arm steady, my gaze unwavering. "All three of you, get out of my house!" Max surged to his feet, his face contorted into the petulant scowl of a spoiled child whose toy has been taken away. "Mom, we can't just leave. We have obligations. The rent, the car payment, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off overnight." "Who says I can't?" My voice rose not in hysteria but in righteous power. It filled the room I owned, in the house I had maintained. For years, I paid rent on an apartment that wasn't in my name. I stocked a refrigerator in a home where I was not welcome. I financed a life that had no place for me. That ends now. Mr. Fisher, seeing his reasonable approach failing, produced a folder from his briefcase. "Mrs. Richter, we have prepared documents to facilitate a smooth transition. A power of attorney would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances. It would only be temporary, until you're feeling more like yourself." I took the folder. I didn't even glance at its contents. With a deliberate, contemptuous flick of my wrist, I sent it sailing directly into the trash can beside my desk. "The only transition happening here," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper, "is your journey to my front door." Lena burst into tears, but they were not tears of grief. They were tears of pure, thwarted fury. "You can't do this to us, Renate. We counted on you. We made plans. We bought things. We took on obligations because we knew we could count on you. Obligations based on my money," I fired back, each word a nail in the coffin of our relationship. "Not on my well-being, not on my happiness, not on my presence, just on my money. And now that I've decided my money is better spent on my own life, I am suddenly a confused old woman. The hypocrisy is breathtaking." Max took a step toward me, his hands outstretched in a hollow gesture of placation. "Mom, we made mistakes," he pleaded, the remorse in his voice as thin as paper. "The wedding, it was a misunderstanding." Lena was nervous. I was under pressure. "We can fix this if you'll just be reasonable." "Reasonable?" The word was ash in my mouth. "You think reasonable is me quietly funding your life while you treat me as a stranger? You think reasonable is pretending my heart wasn't shattered when I was exiled from my only son's wedding?" Seeing the battle was lost, Mr. Fisher began packing his briefcase with clipped, efficient movements. "Mrs. Richter, this is not over. Your family has legal options. If you are indeed making irrational decisions, a judge can determine that you require guardianship. The threat was real, a chilling gust of reality. They were not going to slink away quietly. They were prepared to fight, to drag me through the courts to get what they felt entitled to." I drew myself up to my full height, looking the lawyer directly in his cold, professional eyes. "Mr. Fisher," I said, my voice resonating with a lifetime of strength he could never comprehend, "I suggest you do your research thoroughly before you threaten a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances flawlessly for 5 decades. A woman who raised a son alone after burying her husband. A woman who built a life through hard work and integrity, and who, until last week, was foolish enough to financially support 2 perfectly capable, yet profoundly ungrateful adults. Now, get out before I call the police and have you removed for—" "Perfect," I replied, a sharp, cold smile touching my lips for the first time. "Hire all the lawyers you want, with your own money, of course. Mine is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums." The 3 of them filed out, their postures radiating the wounded indignation of those who have never been truly denied. On the threshold, Max turned for a final parting shot, his words meant to be a curse. "Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to die alone, with no one to take care of you when you really need it." The threat, once my deepest fear, now held no power over me. "Max," I said, my voice thick with a sorrow that was already transforming into strength, "I'm already alone. The only difference is that now it is by my own choice, not by your neglect." I closed the door. The solid thud of the bolt sliding home was the most beautiful sound I had heard in years. I stood in the center of my living room, wrapped in a glorious, profound silence. It was the sound of freedom. That night, sleep eluded me, but not because of the ghosts of regret. My veins hummed with the pure adrenaline of liberation. I lay awake, my mind a strategic command center, mapping my next moves with a clarity I thought I'd lost. If they wanted a war, I would give them one, but it would be a war waged with intelligence, precision, and the unassailable force of truth. By 6 a.m., I was dressed and ready, a soldier for my own cause. My first stop was the office of Mr. Weber, a lawyer I'd trusted with my husband's will years ago. Unlike Fisher, Mr. Weber was a lion with a sterling reputation, known for protecting people like me. "Mrs. Richter," he said, his expression grim as I laid out the events. "What your children attempted is a textbook case of elder financial abuse. The unauthorized entry and review of your private documents compounds it. This is not just a family dispute. It is a violation." His words were a bomb and a battle cry. They confirmed I wasn't losing my mind. I was fighting back against a profound injustice. "We will document everything," he continued, his pen poised. "Every transfer, every gift, every instance of pressure. and we will immediately restructure your will to shield your assets from these vultures. For 3 hours, we dissected my financial history. When Mr. Weber saw the final tally, 30,400, he let out a low whistle. Mrs. Richter, with this sum, you could have traveled the world, lived in luxury. Instead, you funded the lavish ingratitude of 2 people who didn't deem you special enough for a wedding invitation. Leaving his office, I held a battle plan. First, new locks. Second, a state-of-the-art security system. Third, a new untouchable bank account. And fourth, the most thrilling, I would begin living the life I had postponed for decades. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summer, greeted me with his usual kindly familiarity. "Mrs. Richter, what is it today? Another emergency for your son?" "No, Mr. Summer," I said, my voice ringing with new purpose. "This is for me. I need the best locks you have, and I need them today." As I selected the heavy-duty deadbolts, his son Ethan, who specialized in security, appeared as if sent by Providence. "Ethan," I said, "I need a full surveillance system installed. Front door, back door, living room. Price is no object." While they prepared my order, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I knew who it was. "Renate, it's Lena. Don't hang up. Let's talk like civilized adults." "Speak," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. "Listen, we're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. We want to make it up to you. A special dinner just for you at your house. We can cook together like a family." The transparency of the manipulation was almost impressive. "Lena," I interrupted, "how much rent do you owe exactly?" The silence was a confession. 2 months. $1,000. "But that's not why I'm calling." "We miss you." "Do you miss me?" I asked. "Or do you miss my money?" "Both," she blurted out with shocking, brutal honesty. "Renate, I won't lie. Yes, we need help, but we love you too. You're important to us." "If I'm so important," I countered, my words precise as scalpels, "why was I not important enough for your wedding? When was the last time you called me without your hand outstretched?" The silence that followed was our entire relationship, summarized in a void. We both knew the answer. Never. "Lena, I will only say this once. For 3 years, you treated me as an ATM with a heartbeat. You used me, ignored me, and humiliated me. Now that the well has run dry, you've suddenly rediscovered your affection. The transaction is complete, Renate. Please, there is no please. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special. Now I am making mine." I hung up and powered off the phone, silencing the last echo of their world. That afternoon, I walked into the beauty salon I hadn't visited in over a year. I had always canceled my appointments, sacrificing my own small joys for their endless emergencies. Today, I sat in the chair, looked at my reflection in the mirror, and said to the stylist, "I'm ready for a change. Something entirely for me." "Mrs. Richter," my favorite stylist, Cynthia, exclaimed, her face breaking into a warm smile. "What a wonderful surprise. I thought you'd forgotten all about us." "I didn't forget you, Cynthia," I replied, settling into the chair with a sense of ceremony. "I just forgot that I deserved to be pampered too." For the first time in years, I indulged in the full treatment, a revitalizing cut, a rich color to cover the gray that worry had painted, a manicure, a pedicure. I watched the money, my money, be spent on my joy, and I felt not a flicker of guilt, but a surge of triumph. As Cynthia worked her magic, she chatted about her life, her children's school plays, her dream of visiting Greece. It was a refreshing, normal conversation, a world away from the constant drama of Max and Lena's needs. When she spun me around to face the mirror, her eyes gleamed. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter, but more than that, you look free. Did something good happen?" I met my own reflection, a woman I was finally getting reacquainted with. "Yes, Cynthia," I said, a genuine smile touching my lips. I finally learned to say no, and in doing so, I said yes to myself. When I returned home, my newfound serenity was tested for a moment. A car I didn't recognize was parked out front, and my heart clenched. But as I drew closer, I saw an older woman with a gentle face sitting patiently on my porch steps. "Mrs. Richter?" she asked, rising as I approached. "Yes, that's me. I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door." She gestured to the charming cottage beside mine. "We've been neighbors for years, yet we've never properly met. Yesterday I heard some concerning voices. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." Her sincerity was a balm. Here was a stranger offering more genuine compassion than my own flesh and blood. "Come in, Eleanor," I found myself saying. "I'll make us some coffee. I have a story to tell you." Over steaming mugs, the whole sordid tale poured out. The wedding, the humiliation, the lawyer, my declaration of independence. Eleanor listened, her wise eyes never leaving mine, her head nodding in understanding. When I finished, her eyes were glistening. "Renate," she said, using my first name with a natural warmth, "you were incredibly brave. I walked a similar path with my daughter 5 years ago. I, too, believed my wallet was the price of admission to her life. What happened?" I asked, hanging on her every word. I turned off the tap. The fallout was brutal. Threats, guilt trips, emotional blackmail. But after 6 months of silence, my daughter called. Not for money, but to genuinely apologize. We have a real relationship now, built on love, not leverage. Her story was a lifeline of hope. "Do you think Max and Lena will ever understand?" "Maybe, maybe not," she said with gentle honesty. "But that is no longer your burden to carry. Your only responsibility now is to live your life fully and unapologetically." That night I slipped into bed and realized a profound shift had occurred. For the first time in 3 years, my mind wasn't racing with worries about their rent, their groceries, their whims. My thoughts were my own, dreams of travel, of quiet mornings, of a future I controlled. I slept a deep, untroubled sleep, the kind I thought I'd forgotten. The next morning, Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived to fortify my home. As they worked, my phone buzzed incessantly. Unknown numbers, Lena's desperate attempts to breach my new boundaries. I had mastered a new skill, the power of indifference. "Mrs. Richter," Ethan explained, showing me the camera feed on my tablet. "This system gives you absolute control. You'll know who's at your door before you open it. And if anyone tries to force their way in, the police are notified instantly." The irony was stark, but no longer painful. I was building a fortress, not against strangers, but against my own son. It wasn't an act of malice. It was an act of self-preservation. Empowered, I did something I should have done long ago. I called my sister, Diana. "Renate," she answered, her voice laced with surprise. "It's been months. Is everything all right?" "I'm better than all right, Diana. I'm finally free." I told her everything. The secret wedding, the special people dagger, the lawyer's threats. Her response was not what I expected. "Renate," she said, a sigh of relief echoing down the line. "It's about time. Every time we spoke, it broke my heart to hear you measure your worth in the dollars you gave them. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how." "What did you want to tell me?" I asked, bracing myself. "That Max never spoke of you with love. It was always, 'Mom helped me with this,' or 'Mom bought me that.' It was as if you were a benefactor, not a mother. And Lena," Diana hesitated, "Lena always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renate is no longer here, we'll remodel her house. When we inherit, we'll start our business." It was as if they were waiting for your life to end so theirs could truly begin. Her words were a surgeon's knife, precise and necessary, cutting away the last of my delusions. They hadn't just seen me as a bank. They had seen me as a temporary obstacle. After the call, I sat in my kitchen, processing the painful truth. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. On my new tablet screen, I saw Eleanor's kind face. I opened the door to find her holding 2 fresh mugs of coffee. "I thought you might need a friend," she said, her smile a beacon of light in the storm. We settled in my living room, and as she shared more of her own journey, I realized I wasn't just building walls to keep people out. I was opening a door to let the right ones in. "My daughter used the exact same phrases," Eleanor continued, shaking her head with a wry smile. "You're like a second mom to me. We're special to you. Everything will be ours one day anyway." They're rehearsed lines, Renati. Straight from the Emotional Manipulation Handbook. Do you think such a handbook actually exists? I asked, only half joking. Not officially, she chuckled. But it seems they all get the same memo. Chapter 1. Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3. When she resists, question her sanity. We shared a laugh that was both liberating and laced with the bitter taste of truth. It was tragically funny to see our own heartbreaks reduced to such predictable patterns. And the guilt? I asked, voicing the shadow that sometimes still whispered to me. When you cut them off, did it haunt you? Every single day for the first 3 months, Eleanor confessed, her honesty a comfort. But then I started to see the results. My daughter got a second job. Her husband finally took responsibility. They learned to live within their means. More importantly, they learned I was a person, not a pantry to be raided. Bolstered by her strength, I decided to do something I had postponed for years, visit my husband's grave. I had always cancelled, thinking the taxi fare was better spent on one of Max and Lena's endless emergencies. The cemetery was a sanctuary of quiet. Robert's headstone was slightly neglected, a physical testament to how I had neglected myself. I sat on the soft grass, the sun warm on my back. Robert, my love, I whispered. I think I lost myself for a while. After you left, I poured everything into Max. I wanted to be the perfect mother, but in the process, I forgot to be a person. Our son, he's become a stranger, or perhaps he always was, and I was just blind. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and for a moment I felt his presence, a silent absolution. The money you left for my peace, I spent on their chaos. But not anymore, my love. I have learned. I cleaned his stone, arranged the fresh flowers I'd brought just for him, and spent a full hour in the profound peace of that place, answerable to no one. That peace was tested the moment I returned home. My street was clogged with cars, Max's, Lena's, and 2 others I didn't recognize. A small, agitated crowd was gathered on my sidewalk, but this time fear was instantly replaced by resolve. I didn't get out. I tapped my new security app and called Mr. Weber. They're here, I said, my voice steady. There are more of them. Stay in your car, Mrs. Richter. Do not engage. I'm on my way, and I'm alerting the police. Minutes later, the scene was transformed by the arrival of my lawyer and 2 squad cars, their lights painting the houses in flashes of blue and red. I watched from the safety of my vehicle as the officers spoke to my son. I saw him gesticulate, his face a mask of entitled fury. I saw Lena's theatrical sobs, which now stirred nothing in me but contempt. One officer approached my car. The situation is contained, ma'am. You're safe to come out. As I stepped out, Max's voice cut through the air. Mom, this is insane. We're your family. You can't have the police chase your own son away. Max, I replied, my calm voice carrying in the sudden quiet. Family doesn't hire lawyers to declare their mother incompetent. Family doesn't invade her home. Family doesn't treat her like a human bank machine. You owe us, Lena shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. You co-signed our debts. You can't just abandon us. Mr. Weber stepped forward, a wall of professional authority. Any further communication will be through my office, and I'd advise you to consult counsel before making baseless financial threats, as my client has extensive documentation of the tens of thousands she has already gifted you. I watched them retreat, their defeat temporary but palpable. The battle lines were drawn, but I was no longer a lone soldier. That evening, Eleanor invited me for dinner. I met her daughter, not as a supplicant, but as a loving, independent woman. I witnessed their easy laughter, their genuine interest in each other's lives. It was a living portrait of the relationship I had craved with Max. I wanted that. I confessed to Eleanor later, my voice thick with emotion. And you may still have it one day, she said, squeezing my hand. But first, he must learn to see you as a person worthy of respect, not just a source of funding. The next few days were a tense piece. My cameras captured Max and Lena's car circling the block, a shark prowling in the water. I documented every pass, every pause, as Mr. Weber had instructed. Their persistence is their undoing, he'd said. It builds our case for a permanent restraining order. Then on Friday morning, the doorbell chimed. On my screen stood a young, impeccably dressed woman holding a leather-bound folder, her smile professionally benign. "Good morning, Mrs. Renate Richter," she said as I opened the door. "I am a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We've received a report suggesting you may be in an at-risk situation, and I'm here to conduct a wellness check." My blood turned to ice. They had escalated from legal threats to a governmental siege. "May I see your identification?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady. "Of course." She presented a genuine-looking ID badge. "I am Mrs. Schmidt. May I come in to speak with you?" I knew refusal would be misconstrued. I ushered her into my living room, the site of so many battles. Mrs. Schmidt produced a form, her pen poised. "Mrs. Richter, we have received reports of significant changes in your financial behavior, a complete cutoff of communication with your family, and signs of paranoia, evidenced by the installation of extensive security systems. We've also been told you've refused medical and legal help from your loved ones." Every word was a carefully crafted dagger, designed to paint a picture of a confused, unstable woman. I could hear Lena's venomous creativity in every accusation. "Mrs. Schmidt," I said, my dignity a shield around me, "before we proceed, I would like to call my attorney." "Ma'am, this is not a legal interrogation," she said, her smile never wavering. "It's a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, you should have no problem speaking with me." The phrase, "if you have nothing to hide," was a masterstroke of manipulation, designed to make my prudent caution seem like an admission of guilt. It ignited a cold fire in my veins. This was no longer just a family dispute. It was a war for my very autonomy. The social worker's words, "if you have nothing to hide," echoed in the room, a toxic logic I recognized instantly. It was the same twisted reasoning used to justify every invasion, to blame the victim for their own self-defense. "Mrs. Schmidt," I said, my voice layered with a frosty calm I didn't know I possessed. "That is the language of abusers. I am calling my lawyer. You may wait, or you may return with a court order. But I will not answer another question without legal counsel." I called Mr. Weber. He arrived in 20 minutes, a storm contained in a tailored suit. His eyes hardened when he saw Mrs. Schmidt. "Miss Schmidt," he said, after scrutinizing her credentials, "I hope you have a court order. My client is under my representation, and any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment." "Sir," she replied, her confidence visibly wilting, "we have reports from concerned family members. It is our duty to investigate." "What family?" Mr. Weber's tone was dry ice. "The family that tried to coerce a power of attorney. The family that trespassed in this very home. The family that lived lavishly on her generosity while excluding her from their lives." He placed a sick folder on the table with a definitive thud. "This is a documented history of financial and emotional abuse. $33,400. Systematic social exclusion. If anyone requires investigation, it is not my client." Mrs. Schmidt scanned the documents, her discomfort growing with each page. The narrative she'd been fed was crumbling to dust. "Mrs. Richter," she began again, "can you explain why you so abruptly ceased financial support?" "Because I finally opened my eyes," I stated, my gaze unwavering. "I realized that to them I was not a mother but a mortgage payment. I was tired of funding the lives of people who saw me as little more than an inconvenient hurdle." "But don't you feel a responsibility to help your family?" she pressed. The question ignited a righteous fire in my chest. "Miss Schmidt, my responsibility was to raise a self-sufficient adult. My son is 35, married and perfectly capable. Financing his lifestyle is not my duty. It was my choice. And I have chosen to stop," Mr. Weber smoothly interjected. "Miss Schmidt, do you find it normal for a 35-year-old man to be unable to pay his own rent without his elderly mother's subsidy?" She had no answer. I could see the scales tipping. The rest of her questions were a formality. I demonstrated my financial acumen, my independence, my sound mind and body. Mr. Weber presented a recent clean bill of health from my doctor. The case was closed before it had even truly begun. After she left, the silence in the room was heavy. "Renate," Mr. Weber said gravely, "this will escalate. They are spending money they don't have to hire professionals to have you declared incompetent. They are desperate. What else can they do?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "They could file for guardianship. It's a long shot, but with a sympathetic judge and a mercenary psychiatrist, they could try to seize control of your life." The thought was a waking nightmare. But Mr. Weber's next words were my anchor. "They could try, but we have a mountain of evidence proving your competence and their avarice." Later, venting to my sister Diana, she crystallized the truth. "Do you see how far they'll go for money, Renate? They are torching every bridge, spending their last dime, all for the privilege of draining your bank account again." Her words, though painful, were the final key to my liberation. There was no ambiguity left. To Max and Lena, I had never been a person. I was a portfolio. This realization, while searing, was also a cauterizing flame. The guilt vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. That evening, Eleanor arrived with a surprise. Her friends from the garden club. "Renate," she announced, "this is Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We are all veterans in the war against familial greed. We shared our stories like soldiers comparing scars. Maria with her exploitative brother, Carmen with her transactional daughter, Alfreda, who at 80 had rewritten her will to disinherit grandchildren who saw her as their retirement plan. What hurts the most," I confessed, the truth spilling out, "isn't the lost money, but realizing the love I thought I had was never there." Alfreda reached over and patted my hand, her touch as gentle as her words were firm. "Renate, my dear, true love cannot be purchased. If you had to pay for it, it was never real." Her wisdom was a balm. She was right. I had been financing an illusion, buying a performance of affection. "You know what I've discovered?" I said, a genuine smile gracing my lips for the first time that evening. Loneliness in a crowd of users is far more profound than solitude. At least now, when I'm alone, I am in good company. We laughed, a sound of resilience and hard-won joy, and raised our glasses to our collective freedom. After they left, I sat in my garden under a canopy of brilliant stars. For the first time in my adult life, I was utterly financially independent, and instead of fear, I felt a thrilling excitement. I could travel, learn, donate, invest in my future. The world, which had felt so small for so long, was suddenly vast with possibility. Freedom no longer felt like loss. It tasted like hope. For a month I settled into a beautiful, peaceful rhythm. I painted, I gardened, I lunched with friends. I dared to believe the war was over. But on a quiet Thursday morning, as I lost myself in the vibrant colors on my new easel, Mr. Weber appeared at my door. His expression was grim, and the look in his eyes told me the battle was far from over. The peace had been a prelude to the final, greatest storm. "Renate, we need to talk," Mr. Weber began, his usual composure frayed at the edges. "Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They are petitioning to have a legal guardian appointed for you." The words were not just stones. They were tombstones, burying the last vestige of the mother-son relationship I thought we had. The air left my lungs. Does this mean they can take everything? If a judge were to rule in their favor, yes, Max would be granted guardianship, giving him full control over your finances and your life. I sank onto the sofa, the weight of the betrayal so profound it felt physical. My own son was launching a legal crusade to brand me a senile old woman and loot my life's savings. "Mr. Weber, what evidence could they possibly have? You know I'm competent." "They have 3 witness statements alleging erratic behavior. They've submitted fabricated unpaid medical bills and claims you are hoarding medication. Most damningly, they have a statement from a Dr. Lehman stating you refused a psychiatric evaluation, which they are framing as proof of your decline. The diabolical genius of it stole my breath. They had weaponized my healthy independence and my prudent self-defense. twisting them into symptoms of madness. Who are these witnesses? Lena, of course, a neighbor, Mr. Davis, and your pharmacist, Mr. Green. Mr. Davis was the curmudgeon across the street who resented my friend's cars. But Mr. Green, that one stung. I need to speak with him. Something isn't right. We went to the pharmacy that afternoon. Mr. Green paled when he saw me. Mrs. Richter, how are you? Confused, Mr. Green. I'm told you signed a statement saying I behave erratically with my medications. He flushed a deep, guilty red. Your daughter-in-law. She came in saying she was worried. She said your refusal to take prescription medication was a sign you weren't caring for yourself. She had a document. I thought it was for insurance. I didn't know. The manipulation was breathtaking. Mr. Green, I said, my voice firm, I need you to write a new statement. The truth, that I am a healthy, responsible woman who only purchases vitamins and the occasional aspirin. Of course. I'm so terribly sorry, he stammered, his remorse a small but significant victory. Mr. Davis was a harder nut to crack. He answered his door with a sneer. What do you want? I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior, Mr. Weber began. You're damn right I did. Mr. Davis spat. Cameras everywhere like a fortress. Strangers in and out at all hours, yelling in the street. The woman is unhinged. Mr. Davis, I interjected, my voice cold. Those cameras are to protect me from the son and daughter-in-law who broke into my home. The strangers are my friends. The yelling was me defending my property. Would you not do the same? That's what a crazy person would say, he retorted, slamming the door. There was no reasoning with willful ignorance. That evening, our strategy session was grim. Renate, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I know a Dr. Moore, an expert in geriatric capacity. She can provide an official, irrefutable assessment. And if they've bought the judge? I whispered, my greatest fear laid bare. What if the truth doesn't matter? Renate, Mr. Weber said, leaning forward, his gaze intense. The system is not perfect, but it is not wholly corrupt. We have truth, documentation, and motive on our side. We will fight this. Dr. Moore was a woman with kind eyes that missed nothing. For 2 hours, she put me through a battery of tests: memory, reasoning, financial literacy, emotional stability. I solved logic puzzles, performed mental math, and articulated my life choices with clarity. At the end, she smiled. Mrs. Richter, your cognitive function is not just competent. It is exceptional for any age. There is absolutely no indication of decline or impairment. Then why, I asked, the sadness creeping back in, is my family doing this? From the evidence, she said gently, this is a textbook case of elder financial exploitation. It is a tragedy, but not an uncommon one. Her words were a shield and a sword. I was sane. They were predators. When I told my circle of friends, their outrage was a tangible force. Eleanor had gathered them all. Renate, we will testify, Maria declared instantly. Anyone with eyes can see you're sharper than ever, Cynthia affirmed. It was Alfreda, our octogenarian sage, who sealed my resolve. She took my hands, her grip surprisingly strong. Renate, for generations, greedy children have tried to declare their parents insane. But you have what many did not: documentation, a brilliant lawyer, and an army of witnesses who have seen your strength firsthand. You will not lose. The night before the trial, I finally wept. They were not tears of fear, but of grief. A final torrential goodbye to the son I had loved, to the daughter-in-law I had tried to welcome, to the beautiful, aching illusion of a loving family. When the storm passed, only granite resolve remained. They would not take my money, my dignity, or my freedom. The morning of the trial, I dressed in a sharp black suit, my armor. In the mirror, I saw not a victim, but a warrior. In the courthouse hallway, I saw them. Max, in a new suit he surely couldn't afford, refused to meet my eye. But Lena held my gaze, her expression one of cold clinical calculation. Their lawyer was a silver-haired shark, oozing the confidence of a man who made a living shattering lives like mine. Their opening statement was a masterpiece of distortion. Your Honor, the lawyer began in a sonorous voice, Mrs. Renate Richter is a woman in clear decline. She has irrationally severed ties with her devoted family, fallen under the influence of strangers, and exhibits paranoia, all signs of a mind no longer capable of managing its own affairs. He painted my empowerment as dementia, my freedom as manipulation, my friends as vultures. He finished and sat down, a smug tilt to his mouth. Then it was Mr. Weber's turn. He stood slowly, his presence commanding a different kind of attention. "Your Honor," he began, his voice quiet but clear, "this case is not about mental competence. It is about greed. It is about a son and daughter-in-law who for years treated my client as their personal treasury, and who now, having been cut off, are attempting the ultimate withdrawal, the theft of her very autonomy." He let the words hang in the silent, packed courtroom. The evidence will show a woman of profound strength and clarity. It will show calculated exploitation, and it will show that the only thing irrational here is the defendant's belief that they are entitled to legally dismantle the woman who gave them everything, simply because she finally learned to say no. The gavel rang out. The battle was joined, and for the first time, I truly believed we would win. Then they called their witnesses. Lena took the stand first, her performance worthy of an award. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her voice a fragile tremor, as she painted a picture of a mother-in-law in tragic decline. "Your Honor, Renate was like a second mother to me. To see her become so hostile and paranoid, it's been heartbreaking. We only want what's best for her." They were lies, expertly woven with tears. But when Mr. Weber began his cross-examination, the facade began to crack. "Mrs. Schuster, when was the last time you called my client for a conversation that did not involve a request for money?" Lena stammered, We talked about many things. Can you provide the court with a single specific date?" I don't recall exact dates." "Is it true you were married in a ceremony to which my client was not invited?" "It was an intimate gathering," Lena hedged. "And is it true that when she asked about it, you told her you had only invited special people?" Lena's face flushed a telltale crimson. "That was taken out of context." "And what, pray tell?" Mr. Weber asked, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Is the proper context for informing a mother she is not special?" She had no answer. The silence in the courtroom was her confession. Then it was Max's turn. Seeing my own son on the witness stand, preparing to perjure himself to dismantle my life, was an agony I cannot describe. This was the boy whose scraped knees I had kissed, whose nightmares I had chased away. "My mom has always been generous," he testified, avoiding my gaze. "But lately she's become irrational. We believe she's being manipulated." When Mr. Weber approached him, the final vestiges of the son I knew evaporated. "Mr. Richter, how much money did you receive from your mother over the last 3 years?" "I'm not sure of the exact figure." "Does $33,400 sound accurate?" "Perhaps. She was always generous." "And how many times have you visited your mother in the past year without asking her for money?" The silence was more damning than any answer. The other witnesses crumbled under cross-examination. Mr. Davis was revealed as a spiteful neighbor with only superficial grievances. The phony doctor's claims were obliterated by the impeccable credentials and findings of Dr. Moore. Then, it was our turn to present the truth. My army of support took the stand. Mr. Green, my pharmacist, confessed to being duped. Mr. Sommer testified to my clear-minded resolve. Dr. Moore presented her findings, stating for the record that my cognitive function was superb. Finally, Eleanor, Cynthia, Maria, and Elfreda, my sisterhood of survivors, testified not to my decline, but to my renaissance. They spoke of my clarity, my strength, and the healthy, joyful life I had built. Then I took the stand. I walked with my head high, every step a reclaiming of my territory. Mr. Weber guided me gently, allowing me to tell my story, the financial bleeding, the wedding day betrayal, the home invasion, the legal threats. "Mrs. Richter," he finally asked, "why did you ultimately decide to stop the financial support?" Because I finally understood, I said, my voice clear and resonant in the hushed room, that I was not in a family relationship. I was in a transaction. My money had a standing invitation. I did not. Do you regret your decision? My only regret, I replied, looking directly at Max, is that I didn't make it years sooner. Their lawyer's cross-examination was a weak attempt to paint me as confused, but I parried every question with razor-sharp precision, turning his accusations into platforms for my truth. In his closing argument, Mr. Weber was magnificent. Your Honor, this case is not about competence, but about greed. The plaintiffs have not presented evidence of mental decline. They have presented evidence of their own financial desperation. Renate Richter isn't losing her mind. She has found her backbone. Judge Miller deliberated for 2 hours, a lifetime condensed into 120 minutes. When he returned, his face was unreadable. After reviewing the evidence, he began, his voice firm. It is abundantly clear to this court that Mrs. Renate Richter is in full command of her mental faculties. Her financial decisions, while doubtlessly painful for her son, are rational, justified, and within her rights. I felt the first tear escape, not of sorrow, but of relief. Furthermore, the judge continued, his gaze stern upon Max and Lena. The evidence strongly suggests this petition is motivated by financial interest, not familial concern. The request for guardianship is denied in its entirety. I had won, not just the case, but myself. Outside the courtroom, Max and Lena were a storm of fury. Lena shot me a look of pure, undiluted hatred before turning on her heel. Max glanced back, and for a fleeting second, I saw a ghost of the boy I raised, a flicker of shame. But the bridge between us was ash. It was over. That night, Eleanor hosted a victory celebration. We toasted to justice, to freedom, and to the unbreakable bonds of women who lift each other up. Renate, Elfreda said, squeezing my hand, her eyes shining with wisdom. Today, you didn't just win a trial. You won back your soul. She was right. 3 months later, I sold the house full of ghosts and moved to a sun-drenched apartment in the city. I donated a significant portion of my savings to charities fighting elder abuse. With the rest, I began to live. I traveled through Italy, filled a sketchbook with paintings from the countryside, and joined a book club where we debated novels, not other people's debts. I never heard from Max or Lena again. Rumor has it they had to downsize dramatically, and Lena finally entered the workforce. Perhaps hardship taught them the self-reliance my generosity never could. Now when I look at the stars from my new balcony, I think of the woman I was. A woman who believed love was a currency. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone who has learned the most vital lesson of all. True love is priceless, but freedom is worth every penny. My name is Renate. I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I will ever love and protect is myself. Thank you for joining me on Renate's journey. Her story is one of profound pain, but also of incredible resilience. If her struggle resonated with you, or if you have your own thoughts on standing up for yourself, I would be honored to hear from you in the comments below. What would you have done in her place? Your stories and insights are what make this community so special. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember your own strength.